Hey, dear members of the Soul Stories family, today we will bring you a romantic love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Ava Carter pulled her baseball cap low, her sharp blue eyes scanning the crowd in the Monarch Hotel's banquet hall. The crystal chandeliers sparkled like fallen stars, reflecting off elegant evening gowns and expensive suits. The clink of wine glasses mingled with polite laughter. But Ava paid no mind to the opulence. In the pocket of her server's jacket, the weight of a mini camera reminded her of tonight's mission. Infiltrate Stonewell Corporation's secret office and photograph any documents proving allegations of money laundering and tax evasion worth billions of dollars. At just 27, she was already one of Urban Pulse's finest investigative journalists, talented, stubborn, and driven by a fierce belief that justice was the only thing worth living for. Ava had grown up in a rundown house on the outskirts, where her mother drowned in liquor and her father vanished without a word. Those memories forged her into someone who never trusted emotions. Love is a dangerous distraction, she told herself each night, sitting before her computer screen, chasing the secrets of the powerful. But tonight she couldn't deny her heart was beating faster than usual. Stonewell Corporation was no ordinary target. Damian Stonewell, the young CEO behind the conglomerate, was a man admired worldwide for his intellect and generosity. But Ava knew better. Anonymous tips sent to the newsroom had revealed a network of offshore subsidiaries, funneling money through intricate accounts, hiding billions from the authorities. If she found proof, this would be the biggest expose of her career. If she failed, she could lose everything: her career, her reputation, and perhaps her life. Ava adjusted the tray of drinks in her hands, feigning busyness as she passed a group of guests discussing the stock market. She'd studied the hotel's layout for a week, knowing the restricted corridor leading to Stonewell's temporary office was on the 5th floor. Just a few minutes, a few photos, and she'd be gone before anyone noticed. 9:47 p.m. Time to move. Ava weaved through the crowd, her steps light but resolute. She set the tray on an empty table and slipped into the emergency stairwell. No cameras here. A rare oversight by the security team. She climbed to the 5th floor, her breath quickening, the camera in her pocket urging her on. The restricted corridor was silent, lit only by dim neon lights casting a glow on the deep red carpet. The office door was a few meters away, its electronic lock glinting in the dark. Ava pulled out a small lock-breaking device, a gift from an old hacker contact. She plugged it into the lock, her heart pounding as the screen flickered. Come on, she whispered. A beep sounded, and the door clicked open. She slipped inside, closed it behind her, and switched on her phone's flashlight. The room was small but modern, with an ebony desk and a metal filing cabinet. Ava wasted no time. She opened the first drawer, flipping through thick stacks of documents. Most were construction contracts and public financial reports, nothing of value. But in the last drawer, she found a thin folder stamped "Confidential." She opened it, her eyes lighting up at the sight of a list of companies in the Cayman Islands, paired with massive transfer amounts. This is it, Ava whispered, pulling out her camera. She snapped photos rapidly, trying to keep her hands steady. Each click of the camera felt like a heartbeat, thrilling and nerve-wracking. One clear shot, and she'd have enough to start. But then a sound froze her, heavy footsteps in the corridor. A man's low voice carried through, accompanied by the crackle of a radio. Check the restricted area. Someone disabled camera 3. Ava switched off her flashlight, her heart racing. She stuffed the camera into her pocket and bolted from the room, not bothering to close the door. The corridor was now lit, 2 guards approaching from the stairwell. No way back. She ran the opposite direction, her sneakers pounding the carpet, leading her to a shadowy corner with an unmarked door. She pushed it open and plunged into darkness. The small room smelled faintly of wood and cologne. Before she could get her bearings, she collided with a tall figure. A strong hand gripped her shoulder, steadying her. In her panic, Ava heard the guards right outside. "Check this room!" And without thinking, she pulled the man down, her lips meeting his in a sudden kiss. Time seemed to stop. His breath was warm, carrying a hint of mint and something deeper, unnameable. Ava felt his heartbeat, strong and steady, a stark contrast to the chaos within her. She closed her eyes, pretending to be lost in the moment, but her mind was taut, waiting for the sound of retreating footsteps. The voices outside faded, then disappeared. Ava opened her eyes, intending to pull back, but the man gently held her, his low voice whispering in her ear, "You're awfully bold." She flinched, pushing him away, but before she could flee, the room's lights flicked on. Ava blinked, adjusting to the brightness, and then her heart seemed to stop. The man before her wore a black suit, tall, with dark brown hair falling slightly over his forehead. His gray eyes pierced hers, curious and dangerous. A half-amused, half-knowing smile played on his lips, as if he'd just uncovered an intriguing secret. Damien Stonewall. Ava felt the blood drain from her face. She'd studied him for months. His face graced every business magazine, his inspiring speeches and rumors of his ruthlessness. But no research prepared her for his presence. He wasn't just a name, he was a storm, quiet but ready to engulf anyone who stepped into his orbit. "Who are you?" Damien asked, his voice soft but sharp as a blade. He tilted his head, his gaze sweeping over her server's uniform, as if piecing together a puzzle. Ava swallowed hard, her mind racing. I'm just staff. I got lost." She tried to keep her voice steady, but she knew he wasn't easily fooled. Damien stepped closer, closing the distance between them. She caught the scent of his cologne, sandalwood with a hint of spice. "Lost in a dark room and decided to kiss a stranger to find your way?" He smiled, but his eyes remained locked on hers, as if trying to see through her facade. Ava felt her cheeks burn. She wanted to run, but her feet felt rooted. "I'm sorry, it wasn't intentional. I have to go." She stepped back, her hand tightening around the camera in her pocket. Damien didn't stop her. He stood there, arms crossed, his smile lingering. "Be careful," he said as she opened the door. "Not everyone in this hotel is as forgiving as I am." She didn't respond, rushing out, her heart pounding. The corridor was empty now. The guards had moved on. Ava raced down the stairs, out of the hotel, blending into the nighttime crowd on the street. Only when she was in her small apartment, under the dim glow of a desk lamp, did she let herself breathe. She pulled out the camera, checking the photos, the numbers, the names. They were all there, clear and sharp. But as she scrolled to the last image, she realized a fatal mistake. In her panic, she'd forgotten to photograph the final page of the document, the one with the transaction's authorizing signature. The most crucial piece, and she'd missed it. Ava cursed, tossing the camera onto the table. She buried her face in her hands, trying to shake the image of Damien Stonewall's eyes. But they lingered, sharp and haunting, as if he'd seen her. Not Ava Carter, the journalist, but Ava, the person beneath. She told herself it wouldn't happen again. Emotions were the enemy of truth, and she wouldn't let a foolish kiss derail her. But as she turned off the light to sleep, she couldn't deny that a small, long-buried part of her was stirring, as if it had brushed against something dangerous and more alive than the truth itself. Ava Carter sat in the small office of Urban Pulse, the glow from her computer screen illuminating her face, highlighting the tense lines of her features. The papers before her were littered with handwritten notes, arrows, and question marks connecting company names in the Cayman Islands to Stonewall Corporation. But they were just fragments, not enough to convict. She had missed the most critical document page at the charity gala, and the cost of that mistake still haunted her. Not only because of the lost lead, but because of the fleeting moment in that dark room when her lips met Damien Stonewall's. She shook her head, trying to banish the memory. "Focus, Ava," she whispered, gripping the pen tightly. Damien Stonewall was no ordinary man. He was her target, a powerful CEO who might be hiding billions in crimes. That kiss was an accident, a moment of panic. But why did his sharp gray eyes keep appearing every time she closed her eyes? She needed a new plan. If she couldn't get the documents directly, she'd have to get closer, dig deeper. And the only way was to face Damien head-on. She opened her laptop, quickly typing an email to Stonewall Corporation's PR team, requesting an exclusive interview with Damien for a feature on next-generation entrepreneurs. She added a few flattering phrases: innovative vision, industry leader, words she knew would please his team. But in her mind, she had only one thought. This was her chance to make up for her mistake. 2 days later, a reply arrived. Damien had agreed. The interview was set for Friday 10 a.m. at Stonewell's headquarters. Ava read the message over and over, feeling both relief and apprehension. She was walking into the lion's den, and this time there was no room for error. Friday 9:55 a.m., Stonewell Corporation's headquarters was a gleaming glass tower rising from the city center, a symbol of power. Ava stood before the main lobby, adjusting her navy blazer and double-checking the recorder in her bag. She'd chosen an outfit that was professional yet understated, not wanting to draw more attention than necessary. But as she stepped through the revolving doors, she couldn't shake the feeling of entering a chess game, with Damien holding the white pieces. She was escorted to the 42nd floor, where Damien's office occupied an entire corner of the building. His assistant, a middle-aged woman named Elena, with sharp eyes, smiled politely as she led Ava inside. "Mr. Stonewell will see you shortly. Would you like anything to drink?" "Water, thank you," Ava replied, keeping her voice steady. She sat on a leather chair in the waiting area, her eyes scanning the space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Abstract paintings hung sparingly, and a bookshelf held volumes on economics and philosophy. Nothing surprising. Everything exuded control and refinement, just like Damien Stonewell's image. The office door opened, and he stepped out. Ava caught her breath. Damien wore a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, no tie, his dark brown hair slightly tousled with intent. He was taller than she remembered, broad-shouldered, with a confident stride, but it was his eyes that threw her, razor-sharp, yet holding a flicker of something elusive, as if he could see straight into her soul. "Ms. Carter, I presume?" Damien shook her hand, his grip warm and firm. The smile on his lips was both friendly and enigmatic, as if he knew something she didn't. "Pleasure to meet you. I hear you're one of Urban Pulse's finest." "Yes, thank you for making time," Ava replied, striving to sound even. She pulled out her recorder and set it on the table. "I'd like to focus on your vision for Stonewell Corporation. The construction industry is changing rapidly, and you seem to stay one step ahead." Damien sat across from her, legs crossed, his gaze never leaving her. "You get right to it, don't you?" he said, his voice low and smooth. "I like that, but first tell me, what made you choose me for this piece?" The question caught Ava off guard. She'd prepared for every scenario, but the way he looked at her, as if testing her, threw her for a moment. I think you're an intriguing figure," she said, choosing her words carefully. "A young, successful CEO who's private about his personal life. Our readers are curious about the man behind the Stonewell brand." Damien gave a soft laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The man behind," he repeated, as if savoring the phrase. "How many people really want the truth, Miss Carter? Or do they just want a good story?" Ava's throat went dry. She wasn't sure if he was talking about the interview or something deeper. "I think the truth is always worth it," she said, meeting his gaze. "No matter how uncomfortable." A brief silence fell. Damien tilted his head, his eyes probing her. Then he nodded slightly as if making a decision. "Fair enough. Ask away, Ms. Carter. I'm an open book, at least for today." The interview lasted nearly an hour, but to Ava, it felt like minutes. Damien answered her questions with remarkable intelligence and finesse. When she asked about Stonewell's expansion strategy, he spoke of green technology and sustainability. When she deliberately steered toward offshore subsidiaries, he smiled and said they were part of a complex global supply chain. Every answer was polished, yet vague enough to give her nothing to latch on to. Still, there were moments when he let slip something more genuine. When she asked about his motivation, Damien looked out the window, his gaze distant. "I grew up with nothing," he said, his voice quieter. "No family, no home. I built Stonewell not just to succeed, but to prove I could create something lasting, something that won't vanish when I'm gone." Ava jotted notes, but her hand paused. There was something in his tone, a small crack in his perfect facade, that made her want to ask more. But she reminded herself, he was the target, not someone to empathize with. The conversation paused when she accidentally dropped her ballpoint pen. It wasn't an ordinary pen. It had a backup recording device inside, just in case her main recorder failed. Ava bent to pick it up, but Damien was faster. He held the pen, turning it between his fingers, his eyes scanning its sleek metal casing. "Careful," he said, his voice light but pointed. "Not everything that falls is easy to pick up." He handed it back, but the way he locked eyes with her made her feel exposed. He knew, or at least he suspected. "Thank you," Ava said, forcing calm. She slipped the pen into her bag, her heart racing. The rest of the interview passed in a haze of tension. As she left the office, she felt his gaze linger, like a cat watching a mouse before it pounces. In the days that followed, Ava dove into her investigation with double the intensity. She contacted an anonymous source who revealed that Stonewell Corporation had a network of subsidiaries in tax havens, moving money through dozens of accounts to obscure its origins. But the source also dropped an unexpected detail. Damien Stonewell quietly funded several charities, particularly an orphanage on the city's outskirts, which he visited regularly without media attention. "It doesn't add up," Ava muttered, sitting in her small apartment, surrounded by photos and notes pinned to the walls. Why would someone like Damien, cold, calculating, spend time with orphans? Was it a PR stunt or something deeper? She was sorting her thoughts when her phone rang. An unknown number. She answered, cautious. "Hello." "Ms. Carter, it's Damien Stonewell." His voice came through smoothly, as if he were standing beside her. Ava gripped the phone, her mind racing. "I was reviewing my schedule and saw there's a charity event this weekend at Brighthaven Orphanage. I thought you might want to join, to learn more about Stonewell and about me." Ava bit her lip. Was this a trap or an opportunity? If she declined, she might miss a vital lead. If she accepted, she'd be stepping deeper into his game. "Sounds interesting," she said, forcing enthusiasm. "I'll be there." "Good," Damien replied, and she could picture his smile over the phone. "I'll send a car to pick you up. 10 a.m. Saturday. Don't be late." When the call ended, Ava sank onto the couch, still clutching the phone. She knew she was entering a dangerous game where Damien held all the advantages. But at the same time, a small part of her, the part she tried to bury, was curious. What did he want her to see at the orphanage? And why invite her when he clearly knew she wasn't just any journalist? She glanced at a photo of Damien on her desk, a magazine shot, with his sharp eyes and half smile. "What game are you playing, Stonewell?" she whispered. But deep down, she knew the real question was, how long could she keep her wits about her in his presence? On Saturday morning, the suburban sky was clear, pale golden sunlight filtering through the trees, casting dappled light on the dirt road leading to Brighthaven Orphanage. Ava sat in the SUV Damien had sent to pick her up, her hands gripping the bag containing her recorder and a small notebook. She told herself this was just a trip to gather clues, to understand the real Damien Stonewell behind the CEO facade. But deep down, she couldn't deny the growing curiosity, like a smoldering ember she didn't dare touch. As the car stopped at the orphanage gate, Ava stepped out, her breath catching at the sight before her. A large white house with a red-tiled roof, surrounded by a playground, with swings and slides. Children's laughter echoed, blending with birdsong. It didn't feel like a flashy charity meant to polish someone's image. This place was warm, simple, like a true home. Damien stood in the yard, but not the Damien she'd met in his office or seen on magazine covers. He wore a gray t-shirt and faded jeans, kneeling on one knee to fix a bicycle wheel for a boy about 6 years old. His hair was tousled, falling over his forehead, and the smile on his face was so genuine that Ava froze mid-step. No suit, no piercing gaze, no veneer of power, just a man trying to make a child smile. "Look, Ben, this wheel's smoother than a race car now," Damien said, ruffling the boy's hair. Ben beamed, pedaling around the yard, shouting with excitement. Damien stood, brushing his hands, then turned and caught Ava's gaze. His smile faltered for a second, replaced by something deeper, as if he'd found something he didn't know he was searching for. "You made it," he said, walking toward her. His voice was gentle but carried an undeniable pull, each word chosen to draw her into his orbit. "I thought you'd like this place." Ava nodded, striving for professionalism. "It's nicer than I expected," she replied, her eyes scanning the yard. Not like what I've read about Stonewell's charity projects. Damien gave a soft chuckle, not the sardonic one she'd seen before. That's the point. This place doesn't need spotlights. It just needs the kids to feel safe. He gestured for her to follow. Come on, I'll introduce you to everyone. The morning passed like a breeze. Ava walked with Damien, meeting the children and staff. There was Lila, an 8-year-old with wide eyes, clinging to Damien like a shadow, calling him Papa Damien with proud affection. When Lila tugged his hand to show off her drawing, a house under a blazing sun, Damien knelt down, listening intently, his eyes soft but tinged with an unnameable sadness. Ava stood a few steps away, feeling her chest tighten. This wasn't Damien Stonewell, the man behind money laundering allegations. This was a man the children trusted, loved, and needed. At lunchtime, Damien invited Ava to eat with the kids. They sat around a long table under an oak tree, the sunset painting the scene gold. The children vied to tell stories, and Damien ate while tossing in silly jokes that made the table erupt in laughter. Ava tried to act at ease, but every time Damien's gaze met hers, a jolt ran through her. He didn't ask about her work, didn't mention Stonewell, as if today he just wanted to be ordinary. When the kids ran off to play, leaving them alone, Damien poured her a glass of lemonade. You seem uneasy, he said, half teasing, half serious. Afraid I spiked the drink? Ava laughed despite herself. No, it's just, I'm not used to places like this. It's too real. She paused, realizing she'd let slip a piece of herself. I mean, it's different from what I usually see when I investigate. Damien tilted his head, his gaze probing. Investigate, he echoed, his voice lowering. You're always chasing the truth, aren't you, Ava? But have you ever wondered what happens when the truth isn't as simple as black and white? The question stopped her cold. She wanted to argue, to say the truth was always clear, that justice left no room for ambiguity. But his eyes, sincere yet scarred, silenced her. Instead, she asked, why do you do this? This orphanage, these kids. What does it mean to you? Damien looked toward the children playing in the distance. After a moment, he answered, his voice low and deliberate. I grew up in a place like this. No family, no one waiting for me. I promised myself, if I ever had the chance, I wouldn't let any kid feel as alone as I did. He turned back to her, his gaze piercing. That's not a PR story, Ava. That's the truth. His words hit like a blade, not painful, but enough to shake her. She wanted to believe he was the villain, to keep her distance. But the man before her, hands dirty from fixing a bike, with a sad smile when he spoke of his past, wasn't the enemy she'd imagined. In the days that followed, Ava and Damien met more often, not just for work. He invited her to another charity event, where she saw him defend her against a colleague who tried to provoke her with pointed questions. Ms. Carter is my guest, Damien said, his voice like steel, his glare silencing the man. Later, as he drove her home, he pulled over on a quiet road, the dim streetlights casting shadows inside the car. They talked about things unrelated to Stonewell, childhood dreams, hidden fears. When his hand brushed hers on the seat, Ava's heart raced, as if she stood on the edge of a cliff. But meanwhile, her investigation took a turn. A former Stonewell employee from the finance department contacted her through an anonymous channel. After tense negotiations, he handed her a USB drive containing detailed records of Stonewell's tax evasion, lists of offshore transactions, secret bank accounts, and even Damien's signature on some contracts. This was the proof she needed, the weapon to bring him down and expose the truth. Ava sat in her apartment, plugging the USB into her laptop, her eyes glued to the screen as files loaded. Massive sums, shell company names, all laid bare. She began writing her article, the headline flashing on the screen. Stonewell Corporation, an empire built on secrets. But with every word she typed, Damien's image surfaced, laughing with the kids, his eyes when he spoke of his childhood, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. That night she got a text from Damien. Just one line. Meet me at my office, 10 p.m. I need to tell you something. Ava held the phone, her heart pounding. She knew she shouldn't go, but her feet were already moving toward the door. Damien's office was dark, lit only by the city lights streaming through the glass. He stood by his desk, no jacket, shirt sleeves rolled up. When she entered, he didn't smile, didn't joke. There was only a heartbreaking sincerity in his eyes. "Ava," he said, his voice rough, "I know you're investigating me. I've known for a while." She froze, clutching her bag. You knew." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. Damien stepped closer, closing the distance. "I let you get close because I wanted you to see me. Not the CEO, not Stonewell, but me. Because you make me want to be a better man." He paused, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know the truth." His confession crashed over her like a wave, shattering her defenses. Ava felt her eyes sting, but she refused to cry. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do it? Tax evasion, money laundering. If you knew it was wrong, why not stop?" Damien turned away, his hand gripping the chair. "Because I thought I could control it. Because I thought the money could do good. Like the orphanage. Like the things I never had as a kid." He faced her again, his eyes raw. "But then I met you and I realized, I don't want to be the man you have to destroy." Ava shook her head, tears spilling over. "You don't get it, Damien. I can't stop. The truth is all I have." She stepped back, fleeing from him. That night rain poured in sheets. Unable to sleep, Ava ran to Damien's house, her clothes soaked, hair plastered to her face. She pounded on the door, heedless of the bone-deep cold. When Damien opened it, his eyes filled with worry, he pulled her inside, wrapping a blanket around her. "Why do you make me so confused?" Ava shouted, her voice breaking. "Why can't you just be the bad guy? Why do you have to make me love you?" Damien froze, then stepped forward, pulling her outside into the rain, where they faced each other under the gray sky. Water streamed down his face, but his eyes never left her. "Because I love you too," he said, his voice hoarse. "And because from that first kiss, that reckless kiss in the dark at the Monarch, I was drawn to you, Ava. You crashed into me, bold and fearless, and I knew right then you'd change everything. I can't let you go, even knowing you might be the one to ruin me." His confession was a flame, both warm and searing. Ava shook her head, tears mingling with the rain. "You can't say that," she whispered, her voice choked. "You can't make this harder." But she didn't pull away. She surged toward him, her lips finding his, and they kissed in the rain, fierce and painful, as if it were their last. His lips were warm, tasting of rain and an unspoken promise. Ava sobbed, clutching his shirt. "I wish you were just an ordinary man, not the one I have to destroy." Damien held her tighter, rain dripping from his hair onto her cheek. "If you want me to change, I will," he whispered, his voice firm yet wounded. "But you have to give me a reason to believe I'm worth it." They stood there wrapped in each other, but Ava knew she couldn't stay. She stepped back, looking at him one last time, his eyes pleading to hold her forever. Then she turned, walking into the rain, carrying a broken heart and a silent question. What would she choose, justice or love? The rain kept falling, relentless and icy, as if trying to wash away every emotion in Ava Carter's heart. She stepped into her small apartment, clothes soaked, hair plastered to her cheeks, rainwater dripping onto the worn wooden floor. The dim desk lamp cast a faint glow over her workspace, where her laptop sat open, the draft article's title blinking. Stonewell Corporation, an empire built on secrets. Beside it was the black USB drive, a small object with devastating power. All the evidence of Damien Stonewell's tax evasion system, from offshore transaction lists to his signature on illegal contracts. This was the weapon she'd hunted for months, the key to bringing the truth to light, reinforcing her faith in justice. The only thing she trusted in a world full of lies. But now, standing before it, Ava felt her heart constrict, as if an invisible hand were squeezing her chest. She sank into the chair, her trembling hand hovering over the keyboard. Each word she typed, tax evasion, secret accounts, Damien Stonewell, cut like a cold blade, not just into his reputation, but through the memories she tried to bury. Damien's smile as he knelt to fix Ben's bicycle, The gentle look in his eyes as he told silly stories to make Lila laugh. The way he held her in the pouring rain, whispering he'd change if she gave him a reason, all vivid and heartbreaking. She wanted to believe him, to believe the real him was the light she saw at the orphanage. But that belief came at too high a cost, betraying herself, betraying the truth she'd lived her life to protect. Ava leaned back, burying her face in her hands, nails digging into her skin as if to anchor some clarity. In her mind, two opposing images of Damien clashed fiercely. On one side was the warm man who'd shown her his hard and honest moments, ruffling Lila's hair when she called him Papa Damien, speaking of his abandoned childhood in a low, sad voice, looking at her like she was his whole world. On the other was the figure behind the cold numbers in the documents, billions funneled through secret accounts, shell companies built to hide crimes, his signature on every page like a declaration he'd chosen darkness. How could one person be both light and shadow, both the hero to those kids and the deceiver of justice? She stood, pacing the cramped room, her steps heavy as if carrying the weight of the world. This apartment had been her sanctuary, where she built her investigations, where she felt in control. Now it was a cage, trapping her in her own chaotic thoughts. She stopped at the bookshelf where her investigation journals stood neatly aligned, each one a story she'd exposed, a triumph of truth. But this time, triumph meant destroying the man she loved, destroying the good he'd done, like Brighthaven Orphanage, like the smiles of those kids she couldn't forget. She opened a cabinet, pulling out an old bottle of red wine, a gift from a colleague she'd never touched. She poured a glass, the deep crimson liquid catching the light, but she only stared at it, not drinking. Wine couldn't calm the storm in her heart, couldn't silence the two voices screaming in her head, one urging her to hit send and publish the article, to let justice prevail, the other whispering that if she did, she'd lose Damien forever, and perhaps her faith in compassion along with him. She returned to the laptop, deleting the article's title with a decisive keystroke, then typed a new one, Damien Stonewell. Hero or fraud? But even that felt wrong. It was too simple, too judgmental, as if the world were only black and white, when Damien was a canvas of grays, complex, contradictory, and beautiful in a way she couldn't explain. She deleted it again, the blank screen a challenge to face herself. "Who am I without the truth?" she whispered, her voice lost in the empty room. But another deeper question echoed within. Who am I without him? That night, Ava didn't sleep. She sat before the laptop, opening each file on the USB, rereading the lines etched into her mind. Transaction lists, massive sums, shell company names, all undeniable. This was the truth she'd spent her life chasing, and it lay before her, waiting for a decision. But every time she reached to type the article, Damien's image intruded, a ghost she couldn't banish. His eyes as he spoke of his lonely childhood, his voice confessing she made him want to be better. The way he stood in the rain, holding her like she was his only anchor. She snapped the laptop shut, the click ringing in the silence like a verdict. She stood, her body heavy, but in a sudden surge she knew she had to see him one last time. She didn't know what she'd say, didn't know if words could free her from this torment, but she needed to look into his eyes to see him again, even if it was the end. She drove to Damien's penthouse, her heart pounding, each beat a reminder she was nearing a fateful crossroads. The city sparkled with nighttime lights, but they couldn't pierce the darkness within her. When she knocked, Damien opened the door almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting. He wore a black t-shirt, hair slightly mussed, his eyes filled with concern as he saw her standing there, her thin coat no match for the cold wind. "Ava," he said, his voice rough, laced with a tenderness that made her want to break. "Come in, it's freezing." She shook her head, staying at the threshold, afraid that stepping inside would sap her strength to leave. "No, I won't stay long. I need to tell you something." She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice, but tears welled up, hot and unstoppable. "I found the evidence, Damien. Everything. The offshore accounts, the transactions, your signature. I could destroy you right now. Damien didn't flinch. He just looked at her, his gaze calm but heavy with deep pain. I know, he said, his voice soft as a breeze. Each word weighted. I knew from the moment you walked into my office, but I let you get close because I hoped you'd see something worth saving. His words hit her heart like a fist, unrelenting. Ava clenched her hands, nails digging into her palms, as if physical pain could drown out the ache inside. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking, tears spilling like a dam bursting. You used dirty money to do good. You built the orphanage. You saved those kids, but it's all built on lies. I can't live with hiding the truth, Damien. I can't. Damien stepped forward but stopped short, as if afraid any move would shatter her completely. I never wanted you to choose between me and yourself, he said, his voice firm yet wounded, as if he felt her pain as his own. If the truth is what you need, do what you have to. I won't blame you. She looked at him, tears streaming down her cheeks, blurring his face. I want to hate you, she whispered, her voice frail like a plea. I want you to just be the bad guy, so this would be easier. But you made me love you, and I don't know how to stop. Damien closed his eyes as if her words were a knife through him. When he opened them, they shone with a pain she'd never seen, raw and real. I love you, Ava, he said, his voice hoarse, as if it took everything to say it. But I won't hold you if it means you lose who you are. She stepped back, shaking her head, tears falling to the floor like tiny raindrops. Goodbye, Damien. She turned, walking out of the building, not looking back, though each step felt like plunging into an abyss. In her car, she clutched the steering wheel and sobbed, wrenching cries tearing through her chest, echoing in the confined space. She wasn't just leaving him. She was leaving a part of herself, the part that dared to hope, to love, if only for a moment. And in that pain, she knew her choice, whatever it was, would change her forever. 2 days later, Ava stood in a small wooden cabin near Brighthaven Orphanage. She'd rented it from an acquaintance, needing a quiet place to think. The fireplace crackled, flames dancing on the wooden walls. On the table lay a stack of papers, all the documents from the USB, printed page by page. Beside them was the unfinished article draft and a white envelope with handwritten words. To Damien. She picked up the documents, her fingers tracing the numbers and signatures. This was the truth she'd devoted her life to finding. One article, one click of send, and Damien Stonewell would fall. Stonewell Corporation would face investigation, and she'd be the journalist famed for bringing light to darkness. But at what cost? Lila's smile when she called Damien, Papa, Ben's eyes as he rode his newly fixed bike, her own heart, now entwined with a man she couldn't save. Ava knelt before the fireplace, her hands trembling as she held the papers toward the flames. She paused just for a second, as if waiting for someone to stop her, but no one came. She let the papers go, watching them curl, blacken, and turn to ash. The article draft followed, each page burning brightly, as if torching her faith in justice. She sat there staring at the fire until it dwindled to embers. Then she took the letter, rereading it one last time. The slanted words written in black ink were all she could say. Damien, I love you, but I can't love someone I don't trust. The truth is my light, and I can't live in darkness, no matter how warm it feels. I'm leaving so you can choose your path again. Don't look for me. Avenue. She folded the letter, sealed it in the envelope, and left it on the orphanage's kitchen table the next morning, asking a staff member to give it to Damien. She didn't stay to see the kids, didn't dare face Lila or Ben, afraid their eyes would sway her. A week later, Ava left the city. She resigned from Urban Pulse without explanation, saying only that she needed time to find herself. She moved to a small town hundreds of miles away, working for a local paper, writing about simple things, farmers markets, fall festivals, ordinary people. The job wasn't challenging, but it was safe, sparing her from heart-wrenching choices. She rented a small apartment with a window overlooking wheat fields. Each evening, she sat by the window, watching the sunset, wondering if she'd done the right thing. She didn't regret burning the documents. It was the only way to protect what Damien had built for the kids. But she regretted loving him, letting him into her heart, where now there was only an unfillable void. Sometimes she opened her phone, scrolling through articles about Stonewall Corporation. No scandals, no investigations. Damien was still CEO, still appearing at charity events, his perfect smile intact. She wondered if he'd read her letter, if he understood why she left. But she didn't call, didn't write, didn't go back. She'd chosen the light, though it was cold and lonely. In his penthouse, Damien held Ava's letter, rereading it until he knew every word by heart. He stood by the window, looking over the city, but saw only her face, her tears in the rain, her voice saying she loved him. The letter was a goodbye, but also a call, a challenge to face himself. He set it down, his hand tightening. "You're right, Ava," he whispered, his voice lost in the dark. "I have to choose my path again." Damien Stonewall stood motionless in his sprawling penthouse, the city lights outside the window casting cold streaks across his face. On the glass table before him, Ava's letter lay quietly, its slanted black ink words etched into his mind, sharp and indelible. 3 weeks had passed since she left, but each day only widened the void in his heart, like a wound left untended, quietly aching and never healing. The city below glittered, a world of power, money, and ambition he once ruled. But it was no longer his world, his true world. The light he hadn't known he needed until it was gone, had left him with a letter and a goodbye. He picked up the letter, his fingers tracing the worn creases from reading it hundreds of times. "I love you, but I can't love someone I don't trust. I'm leaving so you can choose your path again. Don't look for me." The words weren't just a farewell, they were a blade, a challenge, a call to look in the mirror and face who he really was. Ava hadn't just left him. She'd left a question he couldn't escape. Who was he, and who did he want to become? Damien sank onto the sofa, clutching the letter, his nails digging into his palms as if to anchor some clarity amid the storm of emotions. He'd built Stonewall Corporation from nothing, from days sleeping on office floors, eating stale bread to save every penny. He'd turned it into an empire, a symbol of success, but the cost was the secrets he buried in the shadows. Offshore accounts, illegal transactions, shell companies hiding billions. He justified it all, believing the money could do good. Bright Haven Orphanage, Lila's smile when she called him Papa Damien, Ben's glowing eyes as he rode the bike Damien fixed. The homes he built for dozens of kids. He'd thought they were enough to redeem his sins, to balance the moral scales in his heart. But Ava had torn through that facade. She wasn't just an investigative journalist with sharp eyes and a steely heart. She was the one who saw him, not CEO Damien Stonewall, not the man behind cold numbers, but Damien, the real person with scars and hopes. She'd loved him, knowing who he was, and that love hurt most of all, because she didn't just love him. She believed he could be better, that he could choose light over darkness. But she also left, unable to live with lies, unable to stay with someone she couldn't trust. And that, the truth that he'd hurt the woman he loved most, was the deepest cut. He stood pacing the silent room, his shoes echoing on the marble floor like a countdown. He stopped at the window, gazing at the city where he'd once been king, where every eye turned to him with awe or fear. But now, staring at his reflection in the glass, he saw only a tired man, one who'd built a world but lost himself. He thought of Ava, her eyes as she shouted in the rain, "I want to hate you, but you made me love you," her voice breaking as she said she couldn't live with lies. Her love wasn't an easy gift. It was a burden, a reminder he couldn't keep living with secrets, couldn't let kids like Lila and Ben call him a hero when he knew he was a fraud. Damien returned to the table, his gaze falling on the letter again. He thought of her words from their final night. "You used dirty money to do good, but it's all built on lies." She was right. Every home he built, every smile he brought, was tainted by the money he drew from darkness. He'd thought he could control it, that he could use evil to create good. But Ava showed him that true light couldn't shine from shadows, that the truth, however painful, was the only path to reclaiming himself. He walked to an abstract painting on the wall, bought because it was expensive, because it fit the image of a powerful CEO. He slid it aside, revealing a hidden safe. With slow, deliberate movements, as if performing a ritual, he entered the code and opened it. Inside was a small hard drive, a backup of every document tied to Stonewall's tax evasion. He'd kept it as a final card, a way to protect himself if the secrets ever came to light. It was his shield, his assurance he'd never lose everything. But now, holding the drive, he felt only the weight of his mistakes. It wasn't a shield, it was a chain, binding him to a man he no longer wanted to be. He thought of Ava, not just her love, but her sacrifice. She'd had the evidence, everything to destroy him, but chose to leave, to let him decide his own path. Her love wasn't easy forgiveness. It was a call to stand, face the consequences, and become someone worthy of her trust. "You're right, Ava," he whispered, his voice lost in the dark, a confession to the empty room. "I can't keep doing this." He gripped the drive, its sharp edges biting into his palm, a reminder that truth always had a price. He thought of the kids at Bright Haven, of the letters he couldn't write if he kept living a lie, of Ava's eyes if she ever learned he chose to run instead of face it. Damien sat at the table, placing the drive beside the letter. He opened his phone, pulling up Robert, his lawyer, but his finger hovered over the screen. A part of him, the fearful part, the one that did anything to survive, screamed there was another way, that he could hide, keep going. But then he looked at the letter, at the words, "So you can choose your path again," and knew there was no turning back. The next morning, Damien called Robert, a middle-aged lawyer who'd been with him since Stonewall's early days. When he said he wanted to turn himself in, Robert nearly dropped his coffee. "Are you insane, Damien? You could lose everything. The company, your reputation, your freedom. We can handle this quietly." But Damien shook his head, his gaze resolute. "No, Robert. I've been running too long. This is the only way I can look in the mirror and not see a liar." He glanced at the letter, picturing Ava somewhere out there, and felt a strange relief. This wasn't surrender, it was liberation. For Ava, for the kids, and for himself, he'd face the darkness to find the light. Within 48 hours, Damien met with representatives from the Securities and Exchange Commission. He handed over the hard drive, provided full details of the offshore accounts, and pledged complete cooperation. He didn't ask for leniency, didn't seek to lessen the blow. His only request, that Bright Haven Orphanage be protected, untouched by his scandal. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines erupted. Stonewall CEO turns himself in over billion-dollar tax evasion. Stonewall's stock plummeted, the board held emergency meetings, and Damien resigned immediately. He became the focus of public outrage. But some, especially the kids at Bright Haven, quietly prayed for him. The trial was swift. Thanks to his cooperation and charity record, Damien was sentenced to 2 years instead of the maximum 7. As the judge read the verdict, he sat calmly, his eyes steady. He didn't look at the crowd, didn't seek sympathy. He only thought of Ava, wondering if she knew he was trying to become the man she'd once hoped he could be. In prison, Damien lived a different life. No expensive suits, no power. He worked in the prison library, shelving books and teaching others to read. But each night, in his small cell, he sat under a dim light and wrote letters. Not to Ava. He respected her wish, not contacting her, but to the kids at Bright Haven. He wrote about the stories he'd told them, about his hope they'd grow up strong and never feel abandoned. "You kids are my light," he wrote in one to Lila. "No matter where I am, I'll always come back to you." The letters in some way kept him from breaking, but each stroke of the pen reminded him of Ava, her eyes watching him at the orphanage, her voice saying she loved him. He didn't know where she was, didn't know if she'd forgive him, but he knew he had to keep going, not to prove it to her, but to himself. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Ava Carter stood in Bright Haven's yard, watching Lila and Ben play on the swings. She'd returned after hearing Damien turned himself in, not for him, but for an unspoken promise to the kids. Knowing he wasn't there to care for them, she felt she had to do something. She quit the local paper and became a full-time volunteer at Brighthaven while working as a freelance investigative journalist. Her new work was far from her urban pulse days. She wrote about small-town corruption, exposing injustices big outlets ignored. But she also protected those trying to make amends, ex-convicts reintegrating, business owners who fell but sought redemption. She no longer saw the world in black and white. Damien had taught her that truth could be more complex than she'd believed. Each week, she received a letter from Damien, sent through orphanage staff. He didn't write to her directly, but to the kids, though she knew he meant for her to read them. The letters spoke of his life in prison, the books he read, his promise to return. They didn't beg forgiveness or ask her back, but each line was a gentle knife, both painful and making her proud. Lila asked when I'm coming back, he wrote in one. I told her I'm learning to be a better man, so one day I'll be worthy to stand before you all, and before someone else I hurt. Ava read the letters in her small room at Brighthaven, a flickering oil lamp casting shadows on her face. She didn't reply, didn't write back, not because she didn't want to, but because she was afraid. Afraid that opening her heart again would leave her too weak to stay distant. But when Lila hugged her, asking about Papa Damien, her heart stirred, both aching and hopeful. She started a journal, recording her thoughts about Damien, the kids, herself. You're changing, she wrote one night as rain fell outside, and so am I. But I don't know if our paths will cross again. 2 years passed faster than Ava expected. She became integral to Brighthaven, not just a caretaker but a storyteller, a bike fixer, a comforter when the kids missed Damien. She was no longer the Ava Carter of Urban Pulse, living only for the hunt for truth. She was Ava learning to forgive, not just Damien, but herself. Meanwhile, Damien spent his final prison days with one goal: to start anew. He took courses on nonprofit management, planning a new project, a fund for orphans and ex-convicts reintegrating. He didn't dream of reclaiming Stonewall's glory. He wanted to build something real, the way Ava believed in truth. One morning, as he received his release papers, he stood at the prison gate, breathing free air. In his hand was a final letter for the kids, but this time he added a line for Ava. If you read this, know I've never stopped trying to be the man you saw in me. The early morning at Brighthaven Orphanage was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and the cheerful chirping of birds. Ava Carter sat on a wooden bench under the oak tree, a picture book open on her lap, surrounded by children listening intently. Lila, now 10, sat close, her wide eyes sparkling as Ava read about a little dragon finding its home. Ben, the boy who once rode the bike Damien fixed, fidgeted restlessly, tossing in innocent questions that made the group burst into laughter. Ava smiled, her voice gentle yet vibrant. Over the past 2 years, she'd become indispensable to Brighthaven, not just a caretaker, but a friend, a sister to the kids. She still wrote now as an independent investigative journalist, focusing on stories that exposed evil while celebrating redemption. Her work was no longer a relentless battle for truth, but a journey to find light in darkness, a lesson she'd learned from Damien Stonewall. Yet despite embracing her new life, her heart carried a void. Damien's letters, sent through the kids during his 2 years in prison, were proof he was changing. He wrote of books he read, plans he cherished, and his promise to return to Brighthaven. She didn't reply, not out of anger, but because she feared opening her heart would leave her unable to bear losing him again. But today, as sunlight filtered through the leaves, she felt an odd premonition, as if something was about to happen. Ava, keep reading, Lila urged, snapping her out of her thoughts. Ava smiled, about to open the book, when a faint sound from the gate made her look up. A tall figure stepped in, wearing a pale blue shirt and jeans, holding a bouquet of wildflowers, white daisies mixed with reeds, simple yet radiant in the sunlight. Ava's heart skipped a beat as she recognized him. Damien Stonewall. Damien paused at the gate, his eyes searching until they found Ava. 2 years in prison had left their mark, faint lines at the corners of his eyes, a few silver strands in his dark brown hair. But his gaze remained sharp, holding a fire that never died. He was no longer the powerful CEO atop a throne of success, but a man who'd faced his mistakes and found a new purpose. In his hand, the wildflowers were a reminder of their first meeting at Bright Haven under a sunset, when he was still a mystery and she a skeptical journalist. The kids spotted him first. "Papa Damien!" Lila shouted, leaping from the bench, pulling Ben and the others along. They swarmed him, laughing and chattering, hugging him tightly as if afraid he'd vanish. Damien knelt, embracing each one, his smile a mix of joy and emotion. "I missed you all so much," he said, his voice rough, ruffling Lila's hair as she babbled about the past 2 years. Ava stood, the book falling to the bench. She wanted to step forward to say something, but her feet felt rooted. Watching him with the kids, her heart pounded so hard she feared it might break. Damien looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment, the world dissolved. No more children's laughter, no sunlight or birdsong, just him and her, two people who'd walked through darkness to find each other. Damien rose, walking toward her, the flowers still in hand. The kids scattered, sensing this moment wasn't theirs. When he stopped before her, close enough for her to catch the faint sandalwood scent of him, Ava felt her eyes sting. "Ava," he said, his voice low and sincere, "I've learned to hold your hand the right way, not to grip tightly, but to walk together." She laughed, though tears rolled down her cheeks. "You're still a sap, aren't you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. But then she grew serious, looking deep into his eyes. "Damien, you did it. You changed." He shook his head, his gaze never leaving her. "No, Ava, you changed me. Your letter, what you gave up, it gave me a reason to stand and face myself." He offered her the flowers, his hand slightly shaking. "I'm not promising you the world, but I promise to spend my life trying to be worthy of you, if you'll give me a chance." Ava took the bouquet, her fingers brushing the soft daisy petals. She thought of the past 2 years, the nights reading his letters by lamplight, the days caring for the kids to keep her promise, the moments she wondered if she could forgive. But now looking at him, she knew forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about choosing to build a future. She stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. Damien enveloped her, holding tight as if afraid she'd slip away. The kids cheered, bouncing around, and Ava laughed through her tears, feeling his warmth like a promise that everything would be okay. That afternoon, Bright Haven's yard buzzed with energy. The kids threw a welcome back party for Damien, with homemade cookies and lemonade Ben mixed, sweet enough to make everyone wince. Damien sat among them, retelling stories from his letters, but now he glanced at Ava with each word, as if she were the only one who needed to hear. As the sun began to set, Damien stood, pulling Ava to the center of the yard. The kids fell silent, sensing something special. He dropped to one knee, pulling a simple ring from his pocket, not sparkling with diamonds, just a silver band with delicate leaf engravings. "Ava Carter," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "I once promised I'd never let you go. But now I want to ask, will you hold my hand, face every challenge together, not just today, but forever?" Ava covered her mouth, tears falling again. She looked at him, then at the kids holding their breath, Lila clutching Ben's hand with a beaming smile. She didn't love him because he'd become perfect. No one was. She loved him because they'd found light in darkness together, because he'd risen after his mistakes, and because her heart belonged to him. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked. "I will." The kids erupted, dancing and shouting, as Damien slid the ring onto her finger, stood, and pulled her into an embrace. He kissed her, gentle yet fierce, as if to seal the moment forever. "Thank you," he whispered in her ear, "for believing in me." A month later, Bright Haven hosted Ava and Damien's simple wedding. No five-star hotel, no extravagant gown. Ava wore a plain white dress, her hair loose, while Damien donned a borrowed shirt and blazer. The kids were bridesmaids and groomsmen, scattering wild daisies across the yard, and the staff prepared a feast of home-baked bread and Lila's favorite potato soup. They exchanged vows under the oak tree, where Ava had read stories and Damien had fixed bikes. "I promise to always be honest with you," Damien said, holding her hands. "Not just in love, but in everything I do." Ava smiled, her eyes shining. "And I promise to stand by you, through light or darkness, because we're stronger together. Applause rang out, the kids cheered, and they kissed amid laughter in the sunset. That night, they danced on the grass under twinkling string lights, the kids scampering around. Ava rested her head on Damien's shoulder, feeling his heartbeat, knowing this was her true home. 2 years later, Ava and Damien kept moving forward. Ava continued her journalism, now a respected independent reporter whose articles not only exposed injustice, but inspired change. She published a book, Light in the Shadows, recounting their story without hiding their mistakes. It became a sensation, earning her a prestigious journalism award, though she always said her real reward was the kids' smiles at Bright Haven. Damien, after his release, founded a nonprofit called New Journey, supporting orphans and ex-convicts reintegrating. He worked tirelessly, building community homes and organizing job training, ensuring no one was left behind. His organization grew, attracting donors, but he still spent weekends at Bright Haven, fixing bikes and telling stories. They weren't rich like before, but they were happy. Their small house near Bright Haven echoed with laughter, with Lila and Ben visiting often, naturally calling them Mom and Dad. Ava and Damien still bickered about kitchen arrangements or which article she should write, but always ended with an embrace, knowing their love was forged through trials. One evening, as they sat in Bright Haven's yard, watching the kids play under the moonlight, Damien took Ava's hand, his fingers lacing with her silver ring. "Do you regret it?" he asked softly. Ava leaned into his shoulder, smiling. "Number, because we found each other, not to hide our mistakes, but to grow together." Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.